if your approach to lifting is too serious, you're not going to last. The real problem of all of this is the fact that you can't teach someone to train hard. The actual sensation of training hard cannot be taught. You have absolutely no way of knowing your genetics unless you're a freak.
So I'm going to kick things off talking about hypertrophy training. People who train for hypertrophy have gained the reputation of being small science nerds who neurotically obsess over optimal training. Can you talk in as much detail as possible? How did we get here, and why does it seem like bodybuild training has lost its way?
Wow. Well, we have to go way back because all of this is a response, as always, the pendulum swings. So if you go back just 15 years on YouTube, bodybuilding had this reputation, one, for being pushed by people who are on drugs, and two, for being something brain dead. So very, very often you would have just these nonsensical programs of 5 sets of 15, of a gazillion isolation, compound movements were shunned. You were told not to do squats. It was overall a very poor way to get big as a natural. That is 100% the truth across the board. And so as a response, you started to see more and more people who preached a more strength-based approach to bodybuilding, saying, hey, just get very strong, you'll get big. That approach was popular because it worked better than the previous approach. You will build more mass if you do 3 sets of 10 on the bench than if you do 5 sets of 15 on the like cable fly. That is a guarantee. But it does not mean that this is bodybuilding. It's just that it's slightly better.
Yeah.
After that, you started to see a resurgence of bodybuilding, but it was through, I think, the means of people who said, okay, compound movements are not owned by powerlifters. Bodybuilders have been doing them longer than powerlifters, and this is the way to get bigger. You just have to program them smart. You have to do the ones that actually make the most sense, not just ones that are aligned with whatever someone decided at the Federation of Powerlifting or Olympic weightlifting. And also isolation are great. Isolation are not an afterthought. This is sort of like the general core of the revolution, which was no revolution. It was literally just what people were doing 60 years ago. But this was not super popular because this was still very much in line with the basic orthodox method. So, in a sense, in the periphery of all of this, you had people who realized, hey, what if we used science as a mean to understand what works best for hypertrophy? And this, I would say, started around like 2015, 2016.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first wave of the science-based influencer. And at the start, honestly, it was commendable because they were starting to bring a degree of rigidity, a degree of seriousness into bodybuilding that was needed, because bodybuilding was very much seen as a circus and as a clown act. But I think they took it too far, because what they failed to realize, or maybe what they did realize, and they're all marketing geniuses, is that if you market your methods using science, you're going to attract a large portion of the population that does not think for themselves, that just want to be told, hey, this is the best optimal method. And so this is how the first wave also of optimal training started. And this is when it started to go to hell. Because when you preach optimal, you essentially say, this is the best across the board and there is no question. And that does not exist. It simply doesn't. I love to make videos about what I think is best for hypertrophy, but I know for a fact that it's not true and it never has been. Hopefully it's going to apply to the people that are going to watch, but I know for a fact that it's not that solid. Whereas with science-based influencers, I think they sort of missed the plot and they started to buy into their own hype because they firmly seem to believe that whatever their study that they base their method on makes the method absolutely untouchable across the board. And this is what led us to the situation that we have today, where you see people who use methods that raise an eyebrow for anyone who's been training for a while, but that for these people makes a ton of sense. The issue being that the majority of these people are novices. So they don't have the experience yet to understand why the method might be lackluster. And they might also, in a sense, be dealing with a massive amount of cognitive dissonance because they think, well, this influencer has millions of subscribers. He's big himself. He said this is the best. Why wouldn't it be the best? And it's going to take a degree of experience to realize why it's not. And my fear, and this is why I rant a lot against the science-based influencers, is that the years that it will take for these people to realize that, oh, maybe this is not the best, might be just enough to lose these people. And so now you have a method that was supposed to, in a sense, popularize and make lifting more mainstream that is going to instead kill the fire and the love for lifting in the hearts of many people.
Yeah, I find that really interesting, kind of the social proof aspect of things. I don't know where I read this, but I read something like if you're walking down the street and one person's looking up at the sky, you'll probably just keep walking. But if there's 10 people and they're all looking up at the sky, you'll probably look up at the sky because social proof works that way. Now, if you add that to millions of subscribers or followers on Instagram, and then using science-based and research as a way of social proof, um, it's a way that people don't have to think for themselves and they can leverage that as marketing. And they also don't understand that even when the information may be helpful, right? If they're saying, you can do reps up to 30 as long as you do a high intensity. Well, if you're new, you don't know what high intensity up to 30 is. So you're probably leaving 6 reps in the tank. You might be better doing a set of 6 to 8 where it's harder to be that far away from failure. So there is a lot of nuance as well, even if the information is valid for certain groups like intermediate and advanced lifters.
And the example you give is great because for me, a set of 30 is something that I would never prescribe to anyone, including myself, because the ability to actually be intense is very far removed from like any realm of possibility, because at this point you're doing cardio with weight. And even something like a set of 15, I think that as a novice, it might not be best indicated because you have not yet learned how to push yourself to that degree. So you'll get to 15, but in reality, the weight that you used could have justified 8 reps, right? Or in that case, rather, you could have used the weight that could have gotten you 8 reps and you would have gotten better intensity. What I mean by this, because I just realized that I was very unclear, is that the 15 reps you got did not actually represent high intensity. And in this specific case, most likely, wow, I'm managing to confuse myself live. That's fascinating. I think that this is this is the sign that I'm a bit overworked. So, all right, what I mean instead is that someone who is in this situation, if you have them do 8 reps, there's a chance that actually with the weight that they did 8 reps with, they could get 15. Because there's a degree of effort that they don't know how to put in. Meaning, and this is where I'm starting to like get the pieces together, that if they got 15, in reality, they could have gotten 20 to 25. And the higher the rep range is, the more of these like missed reps exists. The more you have like this ghost part of the set that doesn't happen. And you see that because when you look at people who train in a commercial gym, you will see a lot of people who, and we spoke about that last time we spoke, end their set, they don't really know why. And if you were to just ask them, hey, why did you end your set? They would maybe tell you, well, that's the end of the rep range. But that's not how it works. It's not the rep range that dictates when you stop. You're supposed to match the rep range with the intensity. So you're supposed to, in a sense, be forced to stop. At no point in bodybuilding training do you just count the reps and then it's like 10, done. If you train like this, then likely you're missing that key part, which is the intensity. And so many novices do that.
Yeah, and I also think this idea of the small science nerds is like these exercise tier lists as well. Like what is viewed as S tier for them, I would never suggest for a beginner or even intermediate to consider as an S tier. Like maybe it's a S tier if you've been training for 15 years and you're training for a bodybuilding show and you really care about stimulus fatigue and you want to isolate and you know how to do that. But sometimes it almost seems silly, and that's the starting point where they're starting with these like contrived cable exercises, bringing the bench compared to just doing any compound exercise that, in a more reasonable rep range that they can push themselves.
Mm-hmm. And this is why when you look at a tier list, the most important thing is to figure out who is making the tier list. And this is a point that Nietzsche was arguing about 100 years ago, where he was saying that when you read philosophy, before even reading the book, figure out who actually wrote that book, because it's going to allow you to understand the ideas in it. If you look at a tier list from someone who is, again, like deeply entrenched in the science-based game and who themselves have a lot of experience, their S tier are not going to actually be relevant to you at all. You might actually want to go into their B and C tier, because a quirk of these personalities is, as you described, the fact that they are obsessed with stimulus to fatigue ratio, meaning that whenever a lift is slightly fatiguing, to the trash it goes. But fatigue is fine. I mean, you can handle fatigue. Fatigue is a metric. You just have to be able to like match it. Of course, if you're constantly starving yourself because you have 3 or 4 shows a year, you're not going to be able to handle that fatigue. But someone who's bulking or recamping, they could handle it just fine. And therefore, the stimulus they would get from these lifts would also be very good for them, as opposed to going for something that is more minute and more precise, but that has less overall of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what ends up happening is the novice ends up ignoring the harder exercises and does the easier exercises, but they're only easier because they're not pushing the intensity, and then they're not seeing the results. And then when they reflect on it, their assumption is that they're not optimizing enough, when that is that is not the issue at all. So then they get in this rabbit hole of searching the internet for more optimization information, which fuels these influencers to make more and more of that content, but they're going down the wrong rabbit hole. They didn't ask themselves the right question. They asked themselves, why did I fail? Their answer was, I'm not optimizing right, when the actual answer is, I'm not training hard enough.
Exactly. And the issue, the real problem of all of this is the fact that you can't teach someone to train hard. You can sort of teach them RPE and reps in reserve and sort of give them an idea of percentages, but the actual sensation of training hard cannot be taught. And this is why I firmly believe that people who have played sports in the past, especially things like martial arts or combat sports, they have such an advantage when they start. Because when you fight another human being, you cannot do it at RPE 7. You have to be at RPE 10 or else you get your ass kicked. And just recently, I met up with someone that I met at my gym who blew me away with how like intense he was when he was training. And I was not surprised at all when he introduced himself as a wrestler. I was like, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. You have the baggage. You know what it means to train hard. This guy is going to have an amazing physique. I would put money on that fact because he already has the most important factor of getting a good physique, which is to push yourself.
Yeah, if you played sports at a high level, like I played high school basketball, etc., like your standard is very high on what intensity is and what to push yourself. I do think that makes a difference, because I know when I started training, me and my other friend, he played hockey, his standard was very high as well. And my friends who didn't really play sports, you could see they were more going through the motions. So we were doing the same training programs, the same stuff, but the two of us were seeing more results than the other. And it definitely wasn't genetics. It was just we were willing to push ourselves harder.
And I think this is a good bridge with the idea of the science-based people, is the fact that they appeal to people who themselves are science-based or science-adjacent, which, to be generous and to not use terms that are going to hurt people's, I can say geeks. They tend to be more like spiritually or like mentally, like cerebrally inclined. These are people who dwell on Reddit, and they usually discover these methods through Reddit, through these platforms, and they will jump into the physical realm using these methods, but they don't have what it takes to actually make them work. Because something like, people like to make fun of this lift, like the iliac pull down. That
Yeah.
is the specific, like,
Yeah.
for some reason it has become the caricature.
It's the meme. Yeah, yeah.
It's the meme. Well, that lift is actually good if you push yourself, because it's a lift that is incredibly safe. You're not going to hurt yourself. So you can literally go until you cannot drive your elbow back anymore. But if you're a novice, you're never going to do that. So you'll just do your little sets of 10, remove from failure, and then, yeah, of course, you'll get no result. It's not the lift, it's what's around it.
Do you know who Brian Johnson is?
No.
Okay, so he is this science-based longevity guy who is trying to not die.
Oh, yeah, that
And
guy.
he
Oh,
is
God.
being followed by, I think, the group of people you're saying. I know people who are becoming longevity bros, and they're very nerdy and geeky. And if you're listening, like, no hate on it, but I feel like he's become the guru. So there's this idea that like people will follow things like religion because they believe in the values and they want to potentially have an afterlife. And now this is almost the version for the science bros who don't follow religion. They want to live forever. So now they're following all of his protocols and sleeping at 7:30 and measuring their erection time and all sorts of nonsense.
Wow.
But he has become this authority that people are following. So you're seeing this outside of bodybuilding and other areas where it's, oh, well, he's science based, so I'm eating this food. He's science based, so I'm doing that. And he's referencing lots of research as well.
It's yeah. I only know about the guy on the surface level because for me, if you're obsessed with eternal life, there's already a philosophical flaw about your character because you do not yet understand that eternal life is a curse and it's not something that you should actually want. That the beauty of existence is that it is finite and that it's going to end. And I also want to point out the fact that from what I understand, his obsession is truly surface level in that he's worried about the aesthetic aspect of aging. He's worried about like his face or do I look like I'm aging? Do I have wrinkles and stuff like that? And to me, that is also a very shallow perception of aging as a human because wrinkles and looking older, this is something you should desire. It's a sign that you spend some time on this earth, that you have experience. Things like Botox to like smooth out your face. Why? To me, it's so weird and off base. And the fact that this somehow passes as improvement is the worst of all because it's not, it's regression.
Yeah, someone's gonna post in the comments why we're wrong on this topic because they're zealots in regard to this. So I'll move on. Um, so I want to move on to the topic of genetics, which you've debated and talked about a lot. Can you explain Schrodinger's cat and how it relates to genetics and maybe other aspects of bodybuilding?
Okay, well, it's been a while since I revisited that thought, so let's see if I'm still sharp. So everyone knows Schrödinger's cat is this idea that there is this, in a sense, like conundrum of if you put a cat in a box and you have a mechanism that has a percentage of chance of killing the cat when you open the box, when you open the box, the cat could be dead or alive. And so when the box is closed, the cat is in this like in-between state of death and life because there is no way for you to know for certain if the mechanism has been enclenché, has been triggered or not. For bodybuilding and for genetics, I feel it's the exact same. Meaning that before you start lifting, you have absolutely no way of knowing your genetics unless you're a freak. Unless you're really someone who is big right off the bat. These people exist, but they're a minority. For the majority of people, your genetics are latent potential, meaning that they will only reveal themselves when you start to actually lift. If before you even start, you convince yourself you have bad genetics, you will not put any effort in, you will not be truly in the moment, and so you will end up with a poor physique, and so you will have bad genetics. If you start and you think I have amazing, excellent genetics, you're going to actually give your 100% in the gym, you're going to train hard, you're going to keep pushing for years, and you will end up with a good physique that is unavoidable, so you have good genetics. The person at the start, the cat in the box, was the exact same person with the exact same DNA, but the outcomes were different. And so this is what I call Schrodinger's genetics. It's this idea that you don't know. And so instead of just sabotaging yourself, just go into it thinking you have amazing genetics because that will be your end result. And it also points out to something that I think a lot of natural bodybuilders are discovering, which is that your genetics improve with time.
Yeah.
And what this means is simply that, yeah, you keep training, you get getting bigger, so your genetics are getting better.
Yeah, I find this really interesting because when I started training, I never thought about genetics once. I just started training because we started training as a group of friends. And then within maybe a year and a half, my arms blew up first. And I think it's because we did like 2 or 3 arm days a week. So then people started telling me that I had good arm genetics. So I started assuming I had good arm genetics. And I always thought then, oh, my arms are good, but like my chest and my shoulders are lagging. Now, when I go to the gym, probably because I've been training shoulders so hard for years, people are like, you have really good shoulder genetics. So it's just interesting how it kind of stacks on top of each other. And I'm sure if I build up my chest over the next few years, I'll be told I have good chest genetics. But it was almost an advantage that I went into training with no knowledge. Like I didn't have a preconceived notion of anything. And that allowed me to get the first win. And then you start hearing that positive feedback. And then you start believing, okay, maybe I have good genetics.
Mm-hmm. And if you look back at like the bodybuilders of the silver era, the bronze era, genetics was never uttered once. People did not care. And some could say, well, it's because it was sort of widely accepted. This idea that some people have this leg up over others. It's a possibility, but I also do believe that they didn't care. I think that we live in an age that is very hypocritical because at the same time we deny the existence of an essence, but we're also obsessed by it. And we're obsessed by it because I think that we have spent so much time pushing it down and pretending that there is no such thing, that it's all culture or that it's all just like something that we learn, that whenever there are these aspects like genetics that are undeniable, we double down. But the thing is that, as you pointed out, something like a body part that is dominant is very oftentimes the result of a behavior and not of genetics. You got bigger arms because you are an arm bro. Arm bros have big arms. It's not the fact that there is a factory somewhere that produces arm bros. For me, it's the same. It took me a while to realize that, but after 5, 6, 7, 8 years of training, I realized, hey, you have huge biceps, you have a huge chest, you have amazing abs. Why? Because that's what you train. That's what I trained all the time. It wasn't genetics. And to this day, there's something that I noticed because I will see someone in the gym who has crazy front delts and crazy traps, right? No chest. If I look at the way that person trains, I'm pretty certain that they're going to do a bunch of vertical pressing, they're going to do a bunch of shrugs, but they're not going to train their chest directly. And I'm almost always correct. So you
Mhm.
can literally tell the way someone trains based on the way they look. It has very little to do with what is inside them, with this potential that is decided from birth. There is some of that, but it's so minute that even worrying about it is a waste of time.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the journey of competing with yourself, that's probably the best way to go about it, right? Like, if you are in high school and you're a skinny kid, and you're comparing yourself with the star football player who clearly has elite genetics, you're wasting your time. It's like if I were comparing myself to Warren Buffett or Elon Musk for business, like, why would I do that? Like, I'm just gonna feel like shit all the time. So compare compare yourself with either yourself or people in a certain group. Like, I'll go to places and like a family event or something, and there's like 200 Indian people. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm like probably the most jacked person here at least because it's like it's a bunch of Indian people who are in my age group and they don't eat as well as me or train as well as me. But I'm not comparing myself with pro bodybuilders or pro wrestlers or something like
Mhm. And this is what social media has done. It has taken the individual and just like tossed it in this pool of amazing bodies, amazing performances, which makes people feel worse. I mean, I think if you are an exceptionally competitive individual, there is a certain degree of possibility that is going to hype you up and make you push yourself. But the majority of people, they whine and complain about social media messing with their heads and with their self-worth and their body standards, because the truth is that, as you explained, it just doesn't feel good to constantly have your accomplishments diminished by comparison with people who are just so much better. At some point, it's a degree of poison that actually is damaging to you. And you would do better just realizing, hey, I don't actually live in the virtual sphere. That's something that a lot of people on YouTube need to realize when they say, oh, well, you're small compared to this guy. Yeah, but I don't live with this guy. You know,
that. He's
I
not in
don't
my neighborhood. Yeah, I don't see him every day. It's fine.
when I walk down the street, I'm not surrounded by IFBB pros. I'm surrounded by normal people. And compared to normal people, I'm really, really big. So until the day where I move to a beach town in California where everyone is a bodybuilder with 20 inches arms, I'm looking pretty amazing and I'm going to feel amazing about it. I would be stupid on my part to tell myself, oh, well, there exist people out there bigger. Yes, and they're not around me.
Yeah, and I also think that's why it's sometimes good just to go to a normal gym. Like some people are like purposely trying to find these gyms that have all the roid users there. That's gonna mess with your psyche too. And just go to a normal gym if it has all the equipment
Yeah,
or
for sure.
like it's fine.
And it's not like you're going to, because I think there could be a point to be made that maybe if you go to a gym where there are people who are bigger, they know better and they could actually help you reach a higher level. But if these are drug users, they don't know better. And if anything, looking at the way they train is going to depress you because you'll think, wow, why am I even training that hard when these guys train like this? I mean, clearly the answer is drugs, and that's never a good message to receive.
Yeah, there's PED users at my gym, and I see them and I see how they train. And I don't want to say all PD users don't know how to train, but definitely you can see that when they get a plateau, the solution is more drugs. Like that's very clear that that is the solution instead of the other 50 things that they would a natural would have to assess and figure out how to solve, they go more to more drugs.
Hmm. And at this point, I mean, I'm way past the we have to respect these people stage, because when you spend enough time looking at PD users, I think that this veneer of respectability that is still somewhat present in some people's mind, in mine has been completely vanished and just tarnished, because I train in a gym with IFBB pros. These are supposed to be the cream of the crops, and some of them they do train amazingly hard, right? They are going to do like vertical presses with like the 140-pound dumbbell. They're going to really push themselves. All the respect in the world to them. The fact that they take drugs doesn't take away from the hard work. But I also see people who are gigantic, and they will do sets of 15 with 10 pounds on the cable fly. And I'm sitting there like, there is no way that this is creating stimulus. So the way they're training in reality is just something they do to pass the time. And it's something that I've noticed a lot in gyms, where a lot of the time PD users just seem to hang out. They just seem to be
I
there for the sake of like showing off and sort of like being
agreed.
social, but they're not getting anything from what they are actually doing in that gym.
Yeah, I'll see like creepy steroid users hitting on 18-year-old girls and hanging out the gym for 4 hours. I'm like, oh, your life is horrible, bro. All right. So you were on Alex's channel a few years ago, and you mentioned you'd go back to his old videos from 2017 because it's still relevant. While most channels, it's one and done. It's like a constant news cycle. So something I've been thinking about actually is the shelf life of information. Similar to food, information is perishable. Some info has an extremely short shelf life. So what are your thoughts on filtering the information you consume by this idea of shelf life? Does that resonate with you at all?
I mean, it totally does, because I know that people that were relevant 5 years ago are still relevant today. Their ideas are still important. There are still things to discover. And the videos stick with you. I think that we can all relate to that. Sometimes you watch a YouTube video and a year later, it sort of pops into your head and you're like, I remember that video. And you go back and you revisit it because you think there's something in there that I did not explore enough the first time. But the majority of videos about fitness nowadays that come out, that's not at all what they put in your brain, because you'll watch them and then you'll move on. And within 24 hours, that video is gone from your brain. And I think that there's a degree to that is the lack of time span and like attention that most people possess. But it's also because the videos that are made nowadays for fitness are made to be a one-hit wonder. And it really does feel like the majority of fitness influencers, they try real hard to put out that one video that is going to blow up.
Mm.
And so it's usually just a sequence of duds, because the content and the substance of the video is poor. They put so much energy in the packaging and what it's going to look like from the outside that when you click, you don't actually get much. But they do that because that's the way the platform has morphed. You no longer get big and popular off of long-term consistent content that helps people. You get big off of that one video that goes viral. And so unfortunately, that has colored the quality of the information that we receive. And it's the reason why I barely watch YouTube Fitness anymore. Because I know for a fact that most of these videos, either I'm not going to learn anything, or I'm going to click on a video of someone who is going to be a contrarian, who is going to take something that I know works, and he's going to add his own twist on it by saying, well, actually, it's not the case. Or like you see that with progressive overload, with negatives. It's always the same idea of, if I can't be popular and relevant by sharing information that works, I'm going to instead attack information that everyone agrees with because it's going to get me attention.
Are there still channels that you watch regularly, or do you just not watch too much YouTube Fitness?
Alex, I still click on the. Alex still has this ability to make videos where I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to learn something in this, and I click and I learn something. So I'm of course much more inclined to in a sense give him strength, right? Because he's given so much back to the community and to me that at this point it's just a virtuous cycle. Then there are people that I watch because I'm motivated by their energy. So it's not really just the information that I'm after, like GVS, for example. I see very much GVS like a rival, like someone that is on the path, that is working really, really hard and pushing the limits of what it means to be natural. So I want to consume his content just for the sake of getting me fired up, of thinking, well, this guy is still learning, he's still growing, he's expanding, and that motivates me a lot.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Like when you're consuming this information, I don't think you want to consume 100% educational information, but you also don't want to consume 100% entertainment. So you got to find what that balance is, right? There's some motivation, there's some educational, and there's some entertainment, and they all kind of work together to maybe create some new insights or kind of get you going. And I think too many people are either 100% entertainment or they feel like they need to be in monk mode and do 100% educational. And I think finding that balance is what makes sense.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, lifting is play, right? We're big kids going into the toy store and we just like lift and we have fun. And I do believe that if you have a two, you need that in between.
When you said lifting is play, that really, one thing that stuck with me is that there's a group of people who are looking to outsource their training 100%. Like, give me a plan and I'll do that plan. But I feel like there's something special and magical about making your own plan because that's the play in it, right? Adjusting when you want to adjust, adding in lifts when you want to add lifts, changing the sets and rep scheme, changing the intensity. I feel like there's something magical there that people are missing out on if they don't at some point graduate to making their own plans.
Yeah, it's the ownership part of making your own program that has always made me very suspicious of modern methods of coaching. Because to me, if your coach sends you a spreadsheet and says, you do this and don't question it, then they're taking away that ability from you. And now that I work with people and that I try to help mentor people on the path of bodybuilding, that's the one thing that I never do. I always make sure that they are 100% implicated in the process because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are going to be lifting. So if I make them a plan and they don't like it or it doesn't make sense to them, even if the plan is good, it's not going to yield any results because the way you perceive your training is more important than the training itself.
Do you think by do you think it's important that people develop their own kind of sense of agency?
Yes, 100%. Because if you're going to last in this game, you're going to at some point have to figure out what you want and how to get there. If you constantly follow someone else blindly and you never develop your own agency and ability to, like, in a sense, develop an individuality, that's not going to last for a very long time. So essentially, the way I look at it is it's fine to be dependent on someone at the start. We all are. Like when you're a kid, you don't get out of the womb and like within 2 hours, you're able to make your own milk and you wipe your own ass. You're dependent at the start. That's okay. Like I'm not saying that this is bad. But eventually, if mama is still wiping your ass at the ripe age of 16, there is an issue. So to me, there is a graduating process. And this is exactly the way I approach mentorship. I'm working with people and gradually they become more independent. And then one day I'll get a message and they'll tell me, hey, I don't think I need you anymore. And that is the day when we're good. They have everything that they need to be on their own.
Yeah. So I have a 9 and a 7-year-old, and I was thinking like what would make them successful when they're adults, and I'd be like that they can move out of their house and follow their own dreams and just do whatever they want. And the only way for them to do that is to develop a sense of agency. So I do need to guide them, but I also have to give them space to kind of figure things out on their own, or they're going to be 40 years old, living in my house, asking me what to do next. And that would be a failure.
Mhm. And this is why helicopter parenting is so damaging for a child. It's the instinct of the parent to be overbearing and overprotective, thinking, I'm doing a good thing for that kid. But in reality, you are shielding them from what reality is. And reality is decision making. Right? It's making moves. It's to figure out things for yourself. Allowing a child to make their own mistake and to fail and to take decisions that are not proper. That's incredibly important for development because from a very young age, they are able to develop this core identity where they think, hey, I'm in charge. And I think that's something that parents should be doing is from a very young age, I'm talking like 4 or 5, letting your kid make his own decisions. What is the worst thing that can happen? Right? They're going to wear the wrong shoes at school and they'll learn.
Yeah. I feel like with myself, with like the iPad, I was probably too helicopter first. And now I created a little bit more space and say, okay, these are approved apps, play it whenever you want. But it took me time as well because the mindset in the neighborhood is to be very controlling. And then I
Mhm.
realized like that's gonna not yield the right result. And then again, that relates to everything. That relates back to bodybuilding. If you're just need to know what's this person saying next, then you're not developing that skill set where it's like, okay, I can actually figure out what the next step is myself without someone guiding and holding my hand.
And realizing also in bodybuilding in the gym that the worst thing that can happen is just that you did a set or an exercise that wasn't super conducive to progress. And I think novices are just petrified of trying new things because they think something catastrophic is going to occur. And that's just not the case. The gym is a very safe environment. So this is why you can play and experiment as much as you want.
For sure. All right, I'm gonna throw out some quotes you've said in the past or have mentioned, and give me your first take on it. First one: in individuals, insanity is rare, but in groups, parties, nations, and epochs, it is the rule.
So that's our good friend Friedrich Nietzsche. That's actually not from me. I
I know.
stole his quotes from
Oh, I
Beyond Good
know.
and Evil. Yeah, it's actually something that French psychologists have studied in length. Gustave Le Bon, in particular, if people want to go look it up, LEBON. It's the crowd psychology. It's this idea that you as a person, the way your psyche works is completely different to when you are surrounded by others. And it is manifested, for example, in cases of mass hysteria. You can see that also in situations where crowds are going to start to trample over other humans, even though technically there is no reason for that. But one person panics and the entire flock panics. It's interesting how closely we resemble birds in that. If you ever look at birds who peck around, one bird flies away and they all do. These other birds, they have no idea why they're flying away. They just know one of us flew away, there must be a danger, so we'll all do it.
Mm.
Humans are surprisingly similar to that. And so this is the reason why I think that part of developing independence as a person is also to develop a form of resistance or to grow antibodies against the nefarious influence of the crowd, because you can so easily be influenced and taken into a direction that is not healthy for you just because you fall into this herd mentality that is so prevalent in humans.
Yeah, we all do it. I've found myself falling for FOMO in certain stuff, and I was like, "How did this happen?" Like reflecting, I was like, "Whoa, I got caught up in the herd." And I consider myself to be a pretty like a decently critical thinker, and still get caught up on it. So then I think, okay, for it's hard because it's just it's the common sense is uncommon. So it's actually the natural way to go with the herd.
Yeah, and it's this saying that goes around a lot nowadays because it's becoming more and more relevant. Unfortunately, no one is immune to propaganda. Propaganda is so popular and it's so effective because it taps into the weaknesses of the human psyche. And even if you think of yourself as this like hyper independent free thinker, you still fall for propaganda constantly. And this sentence really means be on your toes, observe, don't just think that you are protected because you're not.
Yeah. And what do you think about someone like Nietzsche who he would destroy people? So people would follow him and only listen to him because he might get rid of his adversaries. Do you think that happens now with people like Elon Musk, where he might destroy everyone and then there's people who just jump on the I'll listen to whatever Elon says bandwagon?
Well, there is definitely a great danger in charisma and intellect, because if you become, in the eyes of people, this idol, this person who can never fail, then yeah, they're going to dismiss blindly the opposite voices that come after you. And I think that Musk is a very good example because the guy is goofy. He has some traits that are worthy to be made fun of. And I think it's extremely healthy if you're a Musk fan to realize, hey, he's not perfect. He has a lot of flaws. And this is the reason why I also believe that um, the great thing about Nietzsche is that he was fairly transparent about his life. And if you go into his life, you'll realize that he had some degree of neurosis. He failed as a man, like we all do. And that makes him more human. I think that unfortunately, a lot of people, because Nietzsche created the philosophy of the Übermensch, they conflate him with the Übermensch. But
Mm,
Nietzsche was always someone who was striving towards that ideal. He never represented it.
yeah. I think someone like Elon Musk, he just needs to be transparent that he cheats in video games. Like just the basic stuff would be fine. And I
But
like
see,
him. I drive a Tesla. Like I'm not anti Elon Musk. I'm not anti Tesla. Just again, it goes back to that social proof. There's just a group of people that like he's one of the smartest people. So I agree 100% with what he says. And I'm like, that's dangerous.
It is. And I mean, the example that you gave of the video game thing, it shows also the dangers of idolizing someone because it's not just you that you hurt, it's also the person. Because you put them on such a pedestal that now they feel like they can never fail. So someone who is a billionaire, who is working really hard, felt the need to pay someone else to play video games for him
And then
because he
lie.
felt the pressure. But this is the fascinating thing. For someone so intelligent, he failed to understand that people would be able to tell. Because the first time he played the game live, people were like, yeah, you don't have the level. It's like if I paid a grandmaster to
Yeah.
like grind me on chess at like 2,500 Hilo, then I start playing and I blunder my I was going to say my horse. I blunder my horse. People are like, well, you don't have a grandmaster level. What is this?
Yeah, he had a section called Elon's Maps, and I'm like, who? If he made that character, he wouldn't name it Elon's Maps. Someone very nicely made that for him. Anyways, yeah, like if you play video games, you know it's not possible for him to be the best Path of Exile player. It involves playing 20 hours a week, 20 hours a day, and he's not doing that. That's not realistic. There's nothing wrong with that. Like he could just say, I really like this game and I want to play on a high level, but I'm working on 12 businesses. So someone plays for me and gets me to high level. And I don't think anyone would judge him for that, but teach their own. All right. The next one is I ask for distinction between what they call a lean bulk versus a giga or a dirty bulk. Some people don't like distinctions to them as a bulk is a bulk, and that's bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was very much so very, relevant 2 years ago because there was the entire thing is always so flip-floppy. It's amusing. So the book is attacked, and then it becomes everyone's like love door, and it just goes back and forth. And it's interesting to me because a bulk is just caloric surplus that allows you to perform more in the gym and to build mass. Why has it become this almost like cult-like thing where you have to be pro bulk or anti bulk? That's nonsensical. The two approaches are bad because the people who are anti bulk, well, congratulations, you're going to be the same size in 10 years. And the people who are pro bulk, they are so pro bulk that if you dare say that, hey, maybe getting 15 kilograms in 2 months is not good, they'll say, oh, it's so you want me to stay small? No, I just don't want you to develop like early onset diabetes. There's the entire point of a bulk is to put on mass, but it's supposed to be quality mass, right? If the goal is to just put on fat, then why even lift? Just go to McDonald's and you'll get the same results. The reason why I wanted that distinction is because it is possible to do a lean bulk conservatively with a very small amount of weight gain per month and to gain mostly lean mass, which means that at the end of this, you won't have to cut down 10 kilos. You might not even have to cut at all. You can recomp. And this creates a cycle where now you're constantly progressing in the gym. Whereas if you giga bulk, okay, maybe you'll get slightly more progress, but you won't put on more muscle. At this point, we pretty much know that. You'll just put on more fat. Then you'll have to do a lengthier cut. Your performance is going to tank because of that. So if you actually look at the outcome at the end, you might have actually lost some lean mass because of all of that nonsense. And all of that comes from impatience. It's people who want quick results. And unfortunately, the bulk crowd tends to also be the crowd that is obsessed with metrics. And the best way to put 20 grams on your bench is to get really, really heavy. So they'll conflate in their head progression in the realm of bodybuilding with strength progression. And this, because everything, of course, is connected, is also the reason why I say if you train for strength, you're not going to get the results you expect because your eyes are not on the right metrics. It's performance you should look at. So performance for a bulk or for strength numbers always correlates with your body weight, how much you're gaining, and at the end of the day, what you look like. That is the most important thing. I don't see a point in completely tanking your physique and literally getting fat if the sake of it is just to gain muscle, because you could gain muscle without that.
Yeah, it seems like the giga bulk is just an excuse to eat like shit and say that it's in the vein of bodybuilding. But I think that's unlikely to be the case. Like there should be a limit on the amount of food you eat. You can still be in a reasonable or even a large surplus. Like you can be in a 700 calorie a day surplus, but there's no reason to be in a 1,500 calorie a day surplus. That seems excessive.
And if you look at the history of the so-called Giga, as always, it was promoted by PED users. Guys from the silver era never ever got fat. Actually, they were very much opposed to the notion of gaining any size on their waistline or of looking bad. I think it's John Grimek himself who he was just attached to the idea of always looking good. And honestly, as much as I don't necessarily align with all of his philosophies, I sort of vibe with that because I do this to look good. I don't want to spend 6 times a month wearing hoodies and having to hide myself because I have a belly. Like, no, I want to have a six-pack year round. And the good news is that you can progress and keep putting on muscle and still look amazing year round. So why not do it?
Do you find the longer you train that it's harder or easier to cut?
Well, to be able to answer that question, I would need to have done a cut in the first place, which I've never done. I've been a perma bulker or a perma recomp guy for as long as I've been lifting. I've done one cut back when I was 240 pounds down to 210 pounds because I was way fat. But it was done very improperly, and it was done as an emotional reaction. It wasn't planned.
Sure.
So I really, when it comes to like giving advice to people on how to cut properly, I'm not that guy.
So I find it more difficult the longer I train. So there's certain people who are like, oh, once you learn the ability to cut, you can turn it on at any time. And I find that challenging because I just don't have the motivation to eat less food and not sleep as well. So like I actually find that it's more challenging because there's not like this clear end goal. Like there's not like I don't care as much for the to be super shredded at the beach, or I'm not doing a bodybuilding show. So I actually find that where you have that initial motivation, it's hard to want to cut when you know it's like you're not gonna progress in the gym and you see the downsides of it. So I always wonder, like, is it challenging for people who aren't doing it for social media?
I mean, I think it is, and I think it's sort of like the industry's best kept secret that in reality a cut only has one benefit, and it's that it makes you look better in pictures. Because even for a natural in real life, unless you are shirtless and pumped, you will look better with a higher body fat because you'll simply be bigger. And if we are to like start to delve into the realm of what women like, which I know tends to piss people off, but women also don't like men who are very low body fat. And I think that there is a degree of that is just like biological perception, where when you're low body fat, your libido is tanked, you're less impressive, you look less masculine, and so it's not going to be attractive. And even for you, I think that you put the finger on something that's interesting and relevant here. If you're someone who is active, who has a job, who has kids, who has activities, you're not going to be able to sustain a cut for a long time because the energy that you need to be able to do all of these things is not going to be there. So for someone whose goal is just to keep improving, keep building muscle, and who doesn't need to do a photo shoot, you most likely will never need to cut. And this is why the bulking cutting cycle is so nonsensical, because it was sold to people as this integral part of the bodybuilding process, when in reality, it's not. It's possible to do your entire journey just doing a slow bulk with periods of recomp here and there, maybe a few mini cuts, but these like drastic cuts every summer, that's literally just a waste of time.
Yeah, I think in my position, I do need to do mini cuts because my waist goes up quite a bit as I bulk. Even if I bulk well, the waist will go up. So I think the mini cut is probably required. But I think this idea of it's a skill that once you have it, you've mastered it. Actually question that skill. I actually question that thought. And I wonder if the people who say that are people who have been into bodybuilding their entire life and they are a certain personality trait where they've like if you've been measuring your food since you were 13, like that skill's very different than if you're someone who enjoys food and going to Korean barbecue and socializing and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And there, I think that part of the reason why some people seem to like cutting so much is not so much the physical repercussions, but the spiritual aspect of it. These are people who enjoy the severity of what a fast entails.
Yeah, I'm
They
seeing a
like the
lot of people do these
mortification.
3-day fasts on YouTube and stuff. Like it's I don't know if it's just more in my feed now, but I'm seeing it.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I do believe that fasting for spiritual gains makes a lot of sense, especially if you can derive some physical benefits from it. But the two need to align. And this is why I see fasting as an aristocratic practice, meaning that it's not something that is available to everyone. A lot of people won't be able to make sense of it. And so the reason why religions for the longest time pushed fasting was because it was a way to get people closer to God. It was a way for people to actually develop and sharpen their spirituality. But if you're just a schmuck who is going to fast because you've heard that it's the best way to cut, that's not going to be beneficial.
Yeah. So yeah, cutting's hard. Bulking's not easy either though, because bulking means you have to, if you're not seeing major gains, that means your training's not good. It means that you're not doing all the things right. So by cutting or maintaining, you can actually, well, more cutting, you can hide the fact that you're not training hard or progressing. But when you're bulking, it's in your face.
Yeah, yeah. The logbook stares back at you when you stare at it. And when you are on a caloric surplus and gaining weight and none of your lifts are going up, now you have to face the dire realization that your training parameters are bad because you should be getting stronger.
All right, next one here. As an intermediate, you should know what you like and don't like. You should have lifts that you hate, and that's fine. You should start to know if you're more into strength or hypertrophy, and you should have that inkling. If you're an intermediate and you don't know what you want from this gym thing, the result will be underwhelming and you'll be forever an intermediate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is part of the personal development that we already spoke about a bit. For me, and this is something that you will hear a lot of people say to justify poor methodology, but everything works for novices. What this means to me is not just do whatever. It's try to figure out what you enjoy because it's going to work regardless. So if you realize, hey, I really like calisthenics, maybe you're going to become a calisthenics guy. If you realize, hey, benching is actually super fun and I love to deadlift, you might become a powerlifter. All of that is part of the journey, but it's fascinating to see that so many people reach the intermediate stage and they know none of that. And the reason why is because, unfortunately, they have bought into the journey as this thing that is purely about performance. And also something that should happen fast. A lot of novices, they cannot wait to be intermediates. And to me, you're just in a way wasting away your childhood because being a novice is the best part. I mean, being advanced is really fun, but there is a certain degree of innocence and purity in being a novice. And you should enjoy that as long as you really can. Then we can also talk about the fact that the thing that makes one an intermediate is yet to be really defined because the majority of people will just say, oh, it's strength numbers. Okay, great. So you tell that to someone, they're going to speed run these numbers with horrible form and with probably like a bulk. Then they become an intermediate, and then what? They probably don't even like strength, so they just wasted their time. They don't know what they want from this, and they are just back in the loop. And this is why we lose, like the intermediate stage is a great filter. We lose 90% of people because when they become intermediate, they think, oh, something should have happened, right? And nothing happens. So they get, in a sense, discouraged and they quit.
Yeah, I also don't know why people like these I don't know, these like groups, right? Like beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and they want to say they're advanced when they're not. Like I consider myself to be an intermediate lifter. I've been lifting 10 years because I'm still progressing at a rate in certain movements where I would be an intermediate lifter. I think I'm quite a way away from being an advanced lifter. And I don't see why that's a bad thing. I think it's a totally reasonable, like again, who am I competing with, right? Like why do you want to say you're an advanced lifter? Like who are you getting clout from? No one. Like I don't see. So if anything, you can milk the gains more as a novice or an intermediate, anyways.
Mhm. Yeah, but people, I mean, it's human, right? People want high social status. They want to tell themselves, I'm part of like the 0.1%, I'm elite, I'm this, I'm that. And this leads to so many stupid practices because it will lead, for example, someone to just hyper focus on a specific lift that no one does and no one cares about, but that they are strong at so that they can say, well, I'm elite at this lift. Yeah, because no one does it. So what even is the point of getting strong at that? And at the core of it, this idea of categories is also just something that was created, literally engineered out of thin air, because people love it. It's the same reason why martial arts tend to have belts. The belts exist to keep people going, so that now I'm purple, now I'm brown, now I'm black. It's very childish, actually. The mind of humans, men and women, we love this idea of like being given something of a different color or of a different nature when we pass on to the new stage. And that's exactly that. I'm an intermediate now. I'm a late intermediate. No, I'm advanced. And people argue and they bicker amongst each other. What do they bicker about? About status. It's all there is to it.
Yeah, it's interesting. everyone plays status games, whether or not they realize it in certain ways. And if you get caught up in status games, it's not going to be for your benefit long term.
Because if there is one thing that I think is relevant in this discussion about beginners, intermediate, etc., it's work capacity, the amount of volume you're going to do, your frequency, and the lifts you're going to engage in. I would never put a novice on the same program as an advanced lifter. But the reason why is because the novice can get away with doing so much less that why would I even have them do a lot? It doesn't mean that a novice cannot train 6 times a week. They can, but it's a waste of time. They could do 3 times a week. The notion being that as you progress, you need space for progression. You need somewhere to go. I very oftentimes now run into people that I work with who come to me and are intermediates or late novices, and they train 5 to 6 times a week with a ton of volume. And the first thing I do is I slash 30 to 40% of it. And I tell them, hey, you're doing too much. There is no justification for you doing this much. You don't even have the ability to do that much. So now you just tank your intensity. And what
Yeah.
they tend to see is they progress better while doing less. And that's sort of like it's a tough thing to grasp because you think, well, how is this even possible? Isn't more work always better? That's part of the problem, that it really is not. But everyone wants to be advanced. So everyone trains like advanced lifters, even when they don't beneficiate.
Yeah, there's so many times where I've reduced from 3 sets to 2 sets on a movement, and I realized the quality of the 2 sets is a lot better than the 3 sets because I know each set has to be as good as possible. So there's like a mental aspect of it, as well. And then it's easier to progress in terms of numbers as well, because now I don't have to hit all 3 sets, I'm hitting 2 sets, so I'm moving differently.
And this is why I think the 2-set method and low set methods in general are very good. It has not even anything to do with low volume. It's more to do with the fact that if you have 5 sets, you can just bullshit your way through the first 3 because you think, hey, there's 2 more after that. But if I give you 2 and you know that this exercise you will only do once a week,
Once a week,
now
2.
these 2, you're going to really enjoy them.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So just a few months, you dropped a video called Rest in Peace Natural Hypertrophy. Welcome, School of Strategy. This is obviously a new direction for you and the channel. Um, was it hard for you and your identity to give yourself permission to make money off what was a hobby?
Yeah, I think it was probably the hardest decision that I made in my life. And it took years for me to be comfortable with it. Because I have such a strong disgust for money, and I'm so keenly aware of the risk of monetizing your hobby that I always refused because I thought to myself, well, one, again, it's against my principles, and two, what if I start to despise what I do? What if I realize, wow, I actually don't like helping people with bodybuilding or philosophy? Then I'm in a situation where I went against my word, and on top of that, I lost the thing that I once loved. So it was very difficult for me to actually put myself in that situation. And actually, the reason why I was able to in the first place was because I was sort of talked into it by members of the community. It's people who reached out to me and asked for help. And as always, I was happy to oblige. And I've helped people for free for 5 years now. So I would make them programs. I would like help them review their program, teach them about methodology, etc. I had people reach out to me and say, "Hey, I want to learn philosophy. Would you teach me?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not?" And as I was doing that, I realized, wow, one, I'm really good at this. And two, I really love it. And these people told me, dude, why don't you just make it your job? Why are
Mhm.
you wasting your time working for a big tech corporation that makes you miserable? Just do this. Like, it's not like you're forcing people. If people want to pay for a service, who are you to tell them that they don't get to, right? And they made me realize that part of this principle, quote unquote, I had was really pride. It was that I didn't want to, in a way, like sell myself or be a sellout. But it had nothing to do with what I really believed in. What I believed is that I wanted to help people. I was refraining and restraining myself because I was afraid of the way I was going to be perceived. And that was a weakness. This is when I realized, okay, you are, in a sense, hindering your own growth because you're afraid of the way people are going to perceive you if you take that step. And that was unacceptable to me. So this is when I realized, okay, you have to do it. Even if it flops, you have to do it because just for your own sake and your character development, it's important. And to tell you like how little faith I had in myself, when I put it out, I was like, yeah, no one is going to go for this. Like there's like people are not going to be interested. And I was proven wrong.
You're I think something people need to think about is you're always selling something. So you're either selling a product or service, or you're selling your time to a company. So you can choose what you're selling. So before you were just selling your time. So you were just selling your time to this company. And now you've decided to sell a product or service, which I think is totally reasonable as well.
Yeah, and I'm also thinking about the global consequence. I'm not going to name the company because I'm still very much involved with them legally, but it's not it's not a good company. It's not doing anything good for the world, and the work that I was doing for them was giving them weapons to be even worse. So why would I not just instead help people? Because I've now been doing the School of Strategy for a few months, and the impact on people's lives have been tremendous. So it makes me realize also, wow, not only are you able to live off of this, but you actually are helping people with their personal life and with their development.
How do you know that you're helping people as opposed to them just being attracted to the power of parasocial, which we've talked about before?
I think that was the real crux of the thing. I was really afraid of having people, especially for the philosophy lessons, who come to me just for the incredible privilege of having to spend an hour with natural hypertrophy,
Yeah.
right? That was the thing where I was like, if this happens, I will just tell you, hey, this is not going to work because this is not going to be healthy for you. So I was very much on the lookout for this. But what I found instead, and this is very interesting, that the people that went for the service, for the majority of them, were not even that big of fans of me, and they were not getting into it for my sake. They did not care about my sake. They felt, hey, I know you, you know what you're talking about. I want
Mm.
what you can offer for my own benefit. Like I've had people who reached out, and this is what I've noticed as well, people who had never supported the channel before, who are gladly paying for the service saying, I'm doing this for me. I don't care about you. You're offering something that is going to make me better. I'm going to like be more efficient at my job. I'm going to improve mentally. I'm going to like grow faster. I'm going to become more intelligent and be able to actually interact with text and philosophy in a way that I've never been able to before. Like that's a no-brainer. I'm going to go for that.
Do you find yourself ever having imposter syndrome providing this type of content, or do you feel
Oh yeah,
comfortable? Yeah.
totally,
Okay.
totally.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, of course. You teach, you're teaching and you think, who am I to teach? And very interestingly enough, I'm friends with the chair of philosophy department, who's an older gentleman who has been doing this for 40 years. And when I revealed to him that I was teaching, he had this like nonplussed expression, like, really, you're teaching? And it really made me doubt myself, because I was like, wow, this guy doesn't think that I can do it. But after that, we discussed and he told me, look, the fact that you're teaching all of these authors, right? Do you feel comfortable with it? Right? Do you feel like you've like spent enough time doing your research to be someone who's competent? This is when I realized, well, is that even mine to decide? Because if I work with someone and we study Dostoevsky and I'm a complete clown and I know nothing, they'll be able to tell. And this is when it was a big shift in my mindset where I realized people who pay for your service, they're not paying for nothing. If they keep paying, it's because they see a benefit. If they didn't see a benefit, why would they pay? It also was part of trusting others and realizing it's not my place to like have these like confidence crisis and thinking, oh, like, am I even worthy enough? Let people decide. If I do good enough of a job, they'll keep coming back. And if I don't, then the business will just crumble and that'll be my fault.
Yeah. So I'm like, I consume a lot of information. So when I was in my 20s, I went to a speed reading course, and the person there was very clearly a fraud. And I was so upset that I walked out after half an hour. I emailed, I got a refund, but if you know, you know, kind of, right? So I think that person, it wasn't even just imposter syndrome. They were in over their head. They had probably just taken this course 2 weeks before, and then they were trying to teach it. And then people like myself showed up, and it was just, not the right environment for them.
Yeah. And in the realm of philosophy, I think this is the one domain where any degree of scamminess, any degree of attempts at like pretending you're someone who you're not, just vanishes.
Mm.
Because if I sit you down, I'm like, hey, let's talk about like the spirit of tragedy. or the birth of tragedy rather,
Mhm.
and you don't know about the book, and you don't know about the themes, and you know nothing about ancient Greece or about tragedies, it's going to be very, very evident very, very soon.
Yeah, for sure. So you were talking about kind of career and hobbies and things like that. So I know a few years ago, you said human intelligence is 1,000 times superior to artificial intelligence. AI strength lies in computational capacities. The AI landscape has changed a lot since you said that, which was probably 3 or 4 years ago. What are your thoughts on the current state of AI and LLMs?
Oh, I'm still not buying into it because I think I can say that I worked on LLMs for a few years.
Okay.
And when you are sort of like underneath the hood of the machine and you tinker with it, you realize how weak it is. And the weaknesses that I've noticed in particular were that the predictability of the model is very flimsy. And they are sort of like there's a ghost in the machine almost, where it was very common that we would train an LLM and we would sometimes be able to just trigger these emotional tantrums and meltdowns that we were unable to really figure out. We would have LLMs say racist things. These were not LLMs connected to networks or the internet. They just came up with it. So much of AI that people consume, like ChatGPT, it's in a way told that a layman is not able to make the thing like break. It's always going to give you enough so that you think, well, this is amazing. But it's because you're not really pushing it enough. And this is in the pushing that I said that human intelligence is 100 times superior because we're adaptable. Whereas the adaptability of these models, it depends on how many like arrows they have. You know, how many weapons have you programmed? When they run out of it, they're done. They have nothing left. But the majority of people can never push them to the point where they have nothing left. So it will remain like this invincible like palace until the point where it breaks. And this is when discussions around like self-driving cars becomes interesting. The car self-drives until the day it doesn't. And the day it doesn't and it fails because it failed to recognize a symbol on the road or because it didn't recognize a wall, the consequences are dire.
Yeah. So I would agree that the average person doesn't understand what it's capable of and what it's not capable of. But I also think AI is going to be like electricity, where it's going to be horizontally inside of everything and we won't even notice it because no one asked for electricity. They asked for light. And even now, you wouldn't think of all the things that, like, you're not buying something because that's electricity. It just happens to be there. So I think it's going to just become kind of ubiquitous in everything. But the actual application between us as consumers using LLMs, I'm not sure how that's going to play out. But I think, like, if you're Amazon, you're going to have 10,000 uses of AI in everything you do for marginal improvement.
Yeah. And this is the reason why I also think that it's interesting that we're developing this apparently like groundbreaking technology that when you give it to the average person is used as a toy. Because ChatGPT, for most people, is a toy. Or it's something that they use to replace their own brain. There are people who just run everything through ChatGPT for ChatGPT to simplify for them. And that's not beneficial. Like, it might simplify your life in the short term, but it's not beneficial. And I'm friends with a bro from the gym who goes to med school and who tells me that the majority of the kids who are going to become the future doctors of this country, they use ChatGPT for everything. So at this point, I'm like, why would I even pay you as a doctor? If ChatGPT got you your degree, why can't I just ask ChatGPT for my symptoms? You know, it really is going to create a crisis in certain domains of employment if people start to rely on AI too much.
Yeah, one of my neighbors is a radiologist, and he's like, it's going to disrupt my entire industry. He's aware of it, and he's went to med school for like 15 years or whatever to, you know? So he's like, yeah, like if it can do my job better than me, then I'm going to have to move more into a management type role. So I thought that was interesting. Okay. Where was I here? I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, give me a second. Was Did I lose that? Okay. So I think I found your first interview, and you had mentioned that you wanted to live in Japan. But recently you said you had never been there. You talked about things like wanting to train sumo wrestlers, and this was obviously quite some time ago. So what advice would you give young men who have these lofty goals or ideas, but they kind of dissipate as life goes by?
That's interesting. Yeah, there was definitely a goal of mine. And it's so interesting looking back because at this point, you couldn't pay me enough to go to Japan. I would never want to live there. And I think that this goal was really built off of ignorance. I had this rose-tinted view of what Japan was. I was in love and still am to this day with sumo wrestling. And I had this big idea that I was going to revolutionize sumo wrestling. I'm going to come in and I'm going to teach them all of these methods of training, and it's going to be amazing. Then I did more research and I realized that I'm not the first person who thought of it. I'm not the first person who tried to get sumo wrestlers to use resistance training, and they all failed. And they all failed because sumo wrestling is deeply traditional. It's deeply rooted in the conservative spirit of Japan. And so they do not care about what is efficient or not. They will stick to the old way. They will do Shiko and they will do body weight stomps and movement for 3 hours, even if they could get better results in 30 minutes, because they're not after the muscles. They're after the spiritual strength and the fortitude it builds when you are on the dojo for 3 hours and you just are sweating and you can barely catch your breath. It's a degree that I did not understand because I did not respect sumo wrestling enough. I had a very Western attitude towards it, thinking, oh, look at all these Easterners, they know nothing. Yeah, it was arrogant. It was deeply arrogant.
Okay. So would you tell would you have told your younger self to not do that or to give it a go?
Oh, give it a go. Go to Japan. Go like knock on their dojo doors and like trying to see like if the Oikata is going to like take you in, and wait until they all laugh in your face.
Yeah, I'll just say those opportunities disappear. My friends, when we were like 23, they did a Europe trip, and I just started my kind of first good job. So they went to Europe for 3, 4 weeks and did a trip. I didn't go. That trip's never happening now. Everyone's married with kids. That trip's gone. Like it's in a place of time. So there's this balance between delayed gratification and doing stuff in the moment when that moment won't exist in 5 years.
Yeah, and right now I still haven't been to Japan, and looking at my life and the way it looks like right now, I think that the day I will set foot on the Japanese territory, I'll be in my 50s. Because
Really?
realistically, for the next 20 years, I'm going to be too busy.
Yeah, I'm planning to go next year, I think.
Nice.
So we'll see how that goes. All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw a picture on the screen here. Okay. This is Natural Hypertrophy ranking Natural Hypertrophy's channel in the most meta way possible. So I'm gonna give you one of two options. Okay. You can tell me if you would rate your channel differently, or you can rate my channel as a fitness interview channel.
I'm going to go with the first option because I don't want to hurt feelings today. I don't really remember the criteria that I used, but if I were to like look globally at it, quality of production definitely has went up because now I use a mic. I actually try to get the image to be somewhat decent. I do some settings so that it actually looks nice. So that went up. Consistency has went way down because I don't post as often as I used to. But it's more to do with the fact that old natural hypertrophy was a maniac, and I used to post like 5 times a week, which I think has sort of like gotten people used to a degree of frequency that is not sustainable once you start to actually edit your videos. So that is worse. Humor, I'm still the same French guy, so I think it's the same. Integrity, I think I will need to dock points because I did go out of my way to make money out of this. So integrity is going down. Quality of information still as good, if not better. I know more than this guy who used to cut his own hair. I did a decent job with this specific haircut, but I'm glad that I'm just like leaving that to the professionals or even just not getting haircuts anymore. What other criteria did I use for this?
There's some black pill stuff, I think.
Black Pill still 10 out of 10. I detest it still to this day. I'm just as disgusted by the people who push it. Um, hmm. Well, content recycling, I'm still doing fairly well because I hate making videos that I've already made. This is part of the reason why I think this channel is still somewhat fresh. Yeah. I think overall, the final grade would still be, I think I gave myself like 130, something like this in these waters. It would still be around that.
Will you make more of these videos ever?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the thing with this format is that it's very convenient because more and more new channels pop out. So whenever I have enough that I've consumed that I can judge, I can just make a new video.
Nice. All right, I'm going to end things off with a fun question today. What are the 2 or 3 points that you think are most applicable from this book towards bodybuilding?
That's such a good question. The first point, and I think it's the most relevant, is the fact that Musashi, who himself was a genius, believed that it was possible for 100% of people to become a warrior, and in this case, we could translate that into becoming a lifter or bodybuilder, as long as they apply themselves. He firmly believed that there was no such thing as someone who did not have enough of a gift or enough of a talent. As long as you actually stick to the way, and we're talking about like 10 years, 15 years, not just 6 months, then you will become exceptional. There is no way around that. This applies to 100% of things, be it languages, chess. I don't care. If you really put your mind to something, you will become incredibly good at this one thing. So that would be the first. The second, let me see. I think that the teachings of Musashi in relation to perspective is very important. Musashi was saying that it was very important to be able to see things from up close and from a distance. And what he meant is that with every situation in life, your ability to get close and to get involved emotionally, or the ability to detach yourself logically, they're both valid and they're both valuable. And I do think that because modern lifting and the modern lifting sphere is so steeped into this like weird cocktail and goo of stoicism and self-improvement, we have a tendency to push away the emotional. But bodybuilding and lifting is an emotional journey. It's a huge part of it, actually. It's what makes it so fun. If you are constantly cerebral and cold about it, you're going to kill that play aspect that we discussed. So I think that's also a hugely important component of that. And then let's see, for the third one, and to close off this video, I need to pick up something that is relevant. I'm actually looking because I have a copy of the Book of Five Rings on one of my little displays so that I am always reminded of the
Awesome.
foundational text. Yeah. Just I'm buying myself some time to find an idea, but this is why I named it the School of Strategy. This business that I have, which
Nice.
is, I think it confuses a lot of people because a lot of people seem to think that it's an actual school, like I'm teaching people like in seminars, which is not the case. It's a one-on-one mentorship or one-on-one lessons, but there are no lessons. I don't sell like courses or stuff like this. The School of Strategy was the name of the school that Musashi himself was running, where he was teaching people the spirit of strategy. And we're going to end with that, the spirit of strategy. What exactly constitutes the spirit of strategy? The spirit of strategy is the ability to, from one thing, know 10,000 things. And I think that this is the key to wisdom. Because if you're constantly having to learn things exactly as they are, then to learn 10,000 things will take you 10,000 hours. But if you're able to derive wisdom from one aspect onto the other, then suddenly you become able to learn at an accelerated pace. And I believe that this is why philosophy is so important. Is because when you read a book about philosophy, you don't just learn about this specific philosophy. It suddenly applies to so many aspects of your life, and it opens so many new doors that every book you open contains 1,000 ideas, and 1,000 idea leads to a 10,000 idea, etc., etc. And it really is part of the spirit of expansion that was dear to Musashi, that is dear to me, and that I really try to embody as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to finish things off. And the way that I think about wisdom is what can't be taught. It can just be learned. So I know that sounds kind of strange, but it's like you won't read it in a book. It'll be the insight that you get from that book or that piece of information. And once you have that key insight, it can be applied to other aspects of your life. And I think that's why it's more important to be wise than have a high IQ. I think it's more useful.
Yeah, and having a high IQ and being gifted with high intelligence might actually be the thing that gets in the way of your wisdom.
Absolutely. And H, thank you for your time again. Where can everyone find you?
So you can find me on YouTube. As always, you subscribe, you put on the bell, whatever the YouTubers say nowadays, and you just wait for a video to pop out. I don't have a schedule. Whenever I have time, I make a video. Sometimes the video is 20 minutes, sometimes it's 2 hours. You can never really know. The topics vastly differ. They range from bodybuilding to philosophy to literature to psychology. It depends on my mood and what I want to talk about. Outside of that, there's also my Coffee page. So if you enjoyed this interview or if you want to, in a sense, solicit me for either mentorship in bodybuilding or for philosophy lessons, that's a link that you can find in my videos, and maybe Varun will be nice enough to also post it in the description.
I'll put it in.
That's nice. Thank you very much. I'll give you a cut. Don't worry about that. And and the last thing is Instagram, which is the tempo of shit posting, where all of the things that I post make no sense and are really, really stupid. So if that's something that you like, you can find me on Instagram as well.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, man.